Hey guys, welcome back. I am Jordan of Jordan's Flower Farm. I am a going into year 3 flower farmer based out of Oklahoma, and our farm focuses on wholesale sales to florists and retail sales at our farm stand. And today I thought we could talk all about bouquet recipes. So I thought we could touch on why do bouquet recipes matter? Why is it important? What efficiencies do you gain from having bouquet recipes? I thought we could talk about costs associated with it and how do you figure that out? That we could talk through all of our bouquet recipes from the season and include our top 5 bouquets that sold the best at our farm stand. And then talk about marketing your bouquets. What goes into marketing them? What are the important things when you're trying to actually sell these bouquets? So, all right, let's jump right in. Why do bouquet recipes matter? So, for me on my farm, I have actually always used a bouquet recipe. So, in year 1 on our farm, we sold at the farmer's market, and in year 2, we sold at our farm stand. And so, I've always had to make mixed bouquets, and I have always used a recipe. And I think that the reason I love them the most is that so what I do is always before I go to the farm, I sit down. Now, I'm kind of a computer Excel nerd, so I always do this in Excel, but you can absolutely just do this on a sheet of paper. But I always write out what my recipe is going to be. So, if it's the summertime and I'm making like our standard summer recipe, and we'll get to what the recipes are, but let's just make one up for now and say it's like 5 zinnias, 2 celosia, 2 basil, 2 marigolds, something like that. It's usually around like 10 to 12 stems in a bouquet recipe. Doing that ahead of time, what that tells me is, am I hitting the price point that I'm trying to hit? Am I overstuffing my bouquet? Am I understuffing it and not putting enough flowers in to where my customers aren't getting the full value? So that's what it tells me. So what I'm doing is what we do is I sell wholesale, so I know what my wholesale price is for a stem. So I put my wholesale price in, and then I do my markup for what I'm going to mark it up to for each individual flower, and then how many of each of those are in the bouquet. And then that tells me, we sell ours for $25 for a bouquet. So did I hit my $25 wrapped bouquet price? If I did, great, I'm good to go. Also in my Excel spreadsheet, what that does is I'm able to drop in how many bouquets do I want to make. So let's say that I want to make 30 bouquets and I have, 5 zinnia stems in it, then 150 stems are needed, and so mine will actually calculate for me how many bunches of zinnias I need to harvest. And it takes into account the way I have my spreadsheet set up, it'll take into account that, maybe like a 10% loss of like broken stems as you're making bouquets. So I always have it like increase it by 10%. So I'm able to just quickly put in my bouquet recipe for the week, make sure that I'm having the correct sales price, and then I'm able to just scroll over and look, okay, here's what I need to harvest tonight, and I'm able to go out and then just harvest what I need for those bouquets. So what that does is I don't have any waste. Hardly any waste is happening because of this. So I'm not like finishing making bouquets and not having or having like a ton of stems left over. Or also, on the other hand, I'm not making bouquets and then having to run back out to the field and get more flowers. I mean, like occasionally that happens, but because of this process, that's like pretty rare that this happens. So it's just super helpful, a really good way to do it. It increases my efficiency because I'm not just going out and harvesting whatever looks pretty. I'm harvesting with a purpose and with a plan and with intention. And so I highly recommend having a recipe before you go out to do your harvest. Yeah, so I think that to me, those are like 2 main things why it's important to have a recipe, so that you know that that your recipe is equal to the value of what you're going to be charging your customer, and so that you're able to harvest efficiently and you know that like this is exactly what I need to harvest to make my bouquets that I'm going to sell to my retail customers. Okay, so let's talk about pricing now. So what goes into the price of my $25 bouquet? So I might do this a little different than some people do, but here's how my brain thinks about it. Take it with however you will. But the way that I think about it is I think of Jordan's Flower Farm and Buttercup the Flower Shed, which is our self-serve flower stand. I think of them as like, and they're not, but I just think of them this way in my mind, as 2 separate legal entities. So I think of it as Jordan's Flower Farm is producing a flower and they're going to wholesale sell it to Buttercup the Flower Shed. So let's talk about just zinnias, for example. So let's say that Jordan's Flower Farm produces a zinnia. Her wholesale price is $1, and then she's going to sell that zinnia to Buttercup the Flower Shed for $1. And then when I'm going and making my bouquet recipe, I'm saying, okay, well, I purchased this for $1, and I'm going to mark that up X%. It just depends on what the flower is and what I'm marking it up. But for zinnias, it's typically 2 times that I'm marking it up. So I'm going to mark that up 2 times, and I'm going to charge my retail customer $2 for that zinnia stem. So that's how I do it. So the majority of my costs when I'm looking at like the cost of a flower, I'm always making sure that the cost makes sense from a wholesale perspective, and then I'm marking it up from a retail perspective. So what's included in the cost of my wholesale flower? So I'm always including like the cost of the, typical cost of goods sold. So like my material being like my zinnia seed in this case. What else am I including? I don't have my spreadsheet in front of me, but I have like a whole like nerdy spreadsheet. Maybe I can pop it up on the screen here for you to show you an example of everything that's included in a zinnia. And then, so like it's like labor, water, drip tape, landscape mulch, just everything that would go into it. My estimated, like, here's what I think we'll harvest. And so then it all estimates out to a price per stem. And then that tells me what my profit margin is on that. And that's my wholesale profit margin. And then I'm able to take that, I sell that to Buttercup. Buttercup then has that set price, marks it up to sell it retail to a customer. So that's how I view it. I know maybe that's a little complicated, but that's just how my brain works. You might do it differently, and that's totally okay. I think there's multiple ways to do this, but that is how I do it. That's how I look at the cost of a stem. So, am I always marking it up? The answer is no. There are some times that I'm not marking up my stem price. Sometimes I'm taking that wholesale price, and that is the price that I'm charging to the customer. Because when you are selling retail at a farm stand, you don't necessarily have the same capability as maybe a florist does. There's a perception that a florist is going to charge a higher price, whereas there's a perception that we may not charge that high of a price at a farm stand. So, for example, let's talk about basil. Basil, I think, is a really great example of this. It's a filler flower. So I'm going to wholesale that to a florist for $1 a stem, 10 stem bunch, $10. I'm not necessarily going to mark that up in my flower stand. A lot of times I'm marking things up 2 times or 3 times for the flower stand, but for a stem of basil, I'm not necessarily going to mark that up. I already have a good profit margin when I am selling it wholesale, and so I don't necessarily need to mark it up to sell it retail. So oftentimes with like basil, I'm selling it for $1 a stem in my wrapped bouquets, which is my same price as wholesale. But there are some flowers where we are able to mark it up and it is higher than our wholesale price. And I would say that's more often the case, is that we're marking stems up and we're selling them for higher. But for some things, more of like your filler related things, they don't have a zero value. I want to be really clear on that. We always have a value for every stem that goes in our bouquet. It just may be, I might not be marking it up to be like a high retail price because I think $2 a stem for a basil stem doesn't necessarily make sense. So maybe I'm selling it for $1. Maybe I'm marking it up, 1.5 so that it's $1.50. But if I already have a good profit margin on it from like how I'm selling it wholesale, then I might not necessarily mark it up when I'm selling it retail. It just varies, and it kind of depends on the flowers you have that week. Most things, like let's say like a zinnia, is pretty much always going to be marked up 2 times in my bouquet recipes, but there's going to be times where, maybe my recipe needs to be different that week for zinnias, and maybe we're able to mark them up 3 times that week, or maybe it needs to be 1.5 that week. And so we can kind of play with the numbers to make it work, but every stem in your bouquet should have a value associated with it, and that value should be making sure that you're making a profit. So always evaluate your stems to make sure that every stem is going to make you a profit. You don't want to have a stem in your recipe and be charging less for it than what it cost you to produce that stem. And so it really goes to knowing your numbers, and maybe another day we can do a deep dive on like how we get to those numbers, but always have a value for every stem in your bouquet recipe. Okay, so let's talk about principles of bouquet design. I am not going to say that I'm an expert because I am not. I just make market bouquets, but I do think it's important to have like the key components of a bouquet. So that is like your focal flowers, your spike flowers, your disc flowers, your air flowers, your filler. So let's talk through like an example. So like in the summertime, zinnias would be your focal flower, like large venery would be your focal flower. Your like disc flowers would be like your smaller Oklahoma series zinnias. Your spikes would be celosia. Your filler would be basil or mint or like smoke bush. And then your air would be like Cosmo. So I think it's really important to incorporate all of those into a design. I'm a big believer in having filler flowers in your bouquets. I just think that it really like rounds out your bouquets, really makes them look beautiful, makes them look interesting. I think that they're super critical to your design. I'm also a big believer in color palettes. I'm not necessarily your type of farmer that's just like doing bright and bold colors. That's not necessarily my customer base. They haven't like shown me that that's what they love. I think that that's because I grow for florists. So I tend to have like a more softer, muted palette, which I think can just be like a little bit different. Like when we were selling at the farmer's market, it definitely was different than the other like vegetable farmers there. They had like the bright and bold colors, whereas we had like the soft and muted. So it's just a different customer base. So I've tried both in our farm stand, and our customers definitely gravitate to like the softer, more muted colors. So that's probably what will continue to grow. So I do care about those things, but I care about them in a way that makes it efficient for a farm stand, right? Because we don't have a whole lot of time to be spending on making, picking out all the different colors. And so how we do it is that like because I do care about colors, when I am like setting down our flowers or making like our buckets, because we tend to do like an assembly line method when we're making bouquets for the farm stand. I am just really intentional about when I'm harvesting that I'm harvesting for like a certain color palette. So like, okay, well this week we want to do like soft pinks and peaches together. And so like I'm harvesting with that color palette in mind so that when I go to put all the bouquets together, they do have like a cohesive look and feel to them. They don't just look like a jumbled like, here's all the colors. Because I just don't think my customers in our area would like that. I think the other thing to think about when you're thinking about filler flowers is that I think that it helps your money go further, for lack of like a better way to say that. But let's talk about springtime. Like if we were having ranunculus bouquets, it would be great if I was growing like ranunculus and orlea and snapdragons and bupleurum, so that way, rather than just having like a 10 stem straight bunch of ranunculus, I'm able to take those like fillers that were way less cost to me to grow, and I'm able to make those ranunculus go further. So I'm able to offer more wrapped bouquets in our stand because I have those fillers that I'm able to add in that round out the bouquet and make it all look really beautiful and interesting. But it makes the ranunculus crop go further. So long story, but our ranunculus failed last year, so I haven't actually got to like test that out to see how it does with our customers. But based on their buying habits this year, I think that they will really appreciate and enjoy and like those bouquets. So I'm excited to make them in 2025. Okay, so the part that you're all really here for, let's jump into bouquet recipes by the month. So you will catch me looking at my notes during this because I don't have them all memorized. So if you see me look away from the camera, it's because my notes are over there. So you might see me look at them. So, okay, March. I also, as we go through, I'm going to note our months where we had the most popular recipes. So March is actually our most popular recipe of the year. I think that's like kind of makes sense because spring flowers are just such like a crazy time for flowers. But our recipe in March was 6 tulips, 2 anemones, and 2 daffodils. And that is the recipe that we sold the most out of for the entire season. We sold a ton of those bouquets in March. So our customers just really like that. I will try to put a picture on the screen so that y'all can see what they looked like. But our customers love that. I think it's always fun to have the tulips in the bouquets with the daffodils and with the anemones. I like the mix of the tulips and daffodils and anemones because I think for us, daffodils and anemones are both perennial here in Oklahoma. And so that helps my flower dollar go further. And so being able to mix 4 stems of those in with the 6 stems of tulips, which are a higher price, can really just make my profit be increased and make a more profitable bouquet. Okay, jumping into April's recipe. So April's recipe, my least favorite recipe of the year. Here it is. And honestly, probably our customers' least favorite recipe of the year. So in hindsight, I think I could have done a better job marketing this recipe. So here's what happened. So on our farm, our ranunculus crop got thrips, and so we did not have ranunculus, so we did not have a focal flower for April. So because of that, we had like all of the airy spring fillers with no focal flower. So probably not our customer's favorite. If I could go back, so what the recipe was probably 2 stems of each, and it was Bupleurum, Orlea, Snapdragon, sweet peas, corn cockle, and Saponaria. So I had like 6 different flowers in there. It was super airy, super bright, super fun, but just no focal flower. And I think that can always be like hard to sell, but that can sometimes be the case for us in Oklahoma. We have a hard time in spring because it gets warm so quickly, and so we do have a flower gap, and there aren't a lot of focal flower options at that time because our peony crop is still young and not mature, so we don't have peonies to harvest from yet. So we're definitely strategizing on what our fail safes will be in future years. So we definitely have some plans for that. So if they work out, I will share them with you, but I'm going to trial them first and see how they go this year. But we have a huge ranunculus crop this year. So I think this year we'll definitely have ranunculus mixed in with those spring fillers. So we'll probably just go down to like 1 or 2 each, or like 1 each of those spring fillers, and then mix in like 5 ranunculus in with it. But yeah, what I would do differently, and how, if this ever happened to you, what I think would be really good is I heard some advice from someone that on those weeks when they just have like a ton of fillers, the way, this is going to make all of y'all cringe, but the way they market it is they just call it like Wildflower Week. And I think that that's super smart, because how many times have you just like cringed on the inside when someone called your flowers wildflowers? But I never think people mean it in a mean way. I think that they just mean that the flowers feel whimsical, and that's what they're really trying to say, but they always call them wildflowers. Like, oh, your wildflowers are beautiful. And I'm like, oh, I definitely cultivated those and there's nothing wild about them. But from a marketing perspective, customers like wildflowers. So I think we could have done a much better job, like marketing this as Wildflower Week. So in the event that something happens with our ranunculus this year, that's definitely the approach that I would take, is market those early spring filler flowers as like beautiful spring wildflower season, and really try to run with it from a marketing perspective, because I think you can do a lot with marketing. You can spin things and make customers want things. So that was our recipe for April. Not one of our most popular recipes, but again, I think I could have done a better job marketing. Nothing like a little clothes change right in the middle of making a video. So we had to go close up our tunnel, but I am back. And so let's move on to May. So in May, in Oklahoma, we typically have a pretty good flower gap where it's really a struggle to have any focal flowers. So we don't have our peony crop established yet. So we have peonies planted in the ground at our farm, but they're not up to like the 3-year mark. So they are not able to be harvested from. So really just in May, we really just have fillers. And so what I did was I actually ordered in peonies from another farm in Texas that does have an established peony crop. And it's funny because they're a Texas farm, but they have like another farm in another state that like their uncle has. Anyways, so we were able to order in peonies from them and use those in our farm stand. So the recipe that we had for May, sorry, I'm gonna look at my notes, were 3 baptisia, 2 peonies, 1 yarrow, 1 orlea, 1 snapdragon, 1 foxglove, and 1 zinnia, because in Oklahoma, our zinnias had already started in May. So we were clearly just getting a couple of zinnias because I was just putting 1 zinnia in the arrangements. But our customers really, really, really liked this arrangement. This was one of our most popular arrangements that we did. Everybody loves peonies, so of course it was a well-loved one, but I thought it just looked beautiful. I thought the colors went really well together. We did like a burgundy peony, a pink peony, and then we had the queen lime red zinnias that really just like brought all that together. And then with the beautiful baptisia, I just loved it. I'll put a picture on the screen. It was one of my favorite recipes, so it just makes me really excited for when our peonies are established and we're able to actually start cutting from our own peonies. Okay, this is Jordan from the future. I was editing the video and realized that I left June out, so let's talk about June's recipe. So June's recipe was 3 rose lilies, 2 zinnias, 2 stems of mint, and I think that was apple mint is what we're growing on our farm, and then 2 basil stems. So this recipe did really well with our customers. I don't know where it ranks in like all of our recipes for the year, but I will tell you that I absolutely fell in love with rose lilies during this month. That crop looked so beautiful. They were easy. I just put them in. They grew, they bloomed beautifully. And I found that our customers really did love the rose lilies. Like we had a really good turnout on the weeks that we had rose lilies. I think it's just something that's different than like a grocery store lily. And they do have a fragrance, but I think it smells good, and they were beautiful. They were like pink and white. And what I'll tell you is it's just so easy to make mixed bouquets with lilies. Like they take up so much space. They have so many blooms on each stem, so you really only have to do like 3 like we did in each bouquet to really like fill it up. And I just loved these. They were my favorite. We're definitely bringing, or they were one of my favorites. I'm definitely bringing rose lilies back onto the farm next year. So we have like a whole different strategy for them. We'll see if it works. If it works, I'll tell you guys about it. But we really struggled with successioning lilies this year just because it's so hot in Oklahoma. So we're still going to succession, but in a different manner. So I was reading about it on the ASCFG group, what some of the other like bigger farmers do for the rose lily successions. So that is what I'm going to try. And if it works, I'll come back and tell you guys all about it. But absolutely loved our June recipe. If you're not growing rose lilies, highly recommend it. They're a great flower for your farm. So July in Oklahoma, or probably everywhere, is officially Lisianthus season. So for our mixed bouquets, we did 3 Lisianthus, 3 zinnias, 3 celosia, and 2 stems of basil. So summertime bouquets are nice and large and beautiful, and the Lisianthus was just amazing. So we actually had an issue with our Lisianthus this year, so I brought that Lisianthus in from another farm in Oklahoma that is just about 25 minutes from my farm. I was able to source that from her. One week we did use our Lisianthus, but it just wasn't as long as I needed it to, or as tall as I needed it to be, because we got them in the ground late because our tunnel got thrips, like I talked about earlier with the ranunculus. And so I didn't want to harvest from the Lisianthus that was in the tunnel, so we brought in more Lisianthus, planted it in another spot, and so it got planted late. It wasn't tall enough. So, but what was okay about that is because of the way that we do our costing for our recipes, is it wasn't a big deal to have to buy it from someone else. I was able to just purchase it from her for her wholesale price, mark it up 2 times to make it what I needed it to be in my retail bouquet, and then sell it at the farm stand. So I was still making a profit off of it. It was awesome. I was able to support another farmer, which is always fun. And so I want to say there were like 2 or 3 weeks where I ordered Lisianthus from her, and I would just go to her farm, pick it up, and then use it in my bouquets. So I would harvest my stuff to go with hers, and it was probably one of our customers' favorite weeks. Let's see if I look at my spreadsheet. Yeah, this recipe was like was in our top 5 recipes with our customers of bouquets that we sold the most out of. So Lisianthus is definitely one that our customers really love. So I am looking forward to growing it well this year. Is our August recipe. So for August on the flower farm is like all of your typical flower farmer key flowers. So it was 3 zinnias, 2 celosia, a lily, 2 dahlias, and 2 basil stems. So this was one of our customers' top favorite bouquets. I want to say this was, our second most popular bouquet. So this came right after the tulips and anemones and daffodils bouquet. That was our most popular. This one was our second most popular that we sold the most out of during the season. We grew the LA hybrid lilies from Ownings and their fall mix, and we really liked those. Thought they were beautiful. Maybe like a little bit fragile, but as long as we cut them at the right time and got them in the bouquets at the right time, then totally fine. But they're beautiful. I really prefer rose lilies, but I tried to grow those in the fall and they just failed because I don't think they can handle our Oklahoma heat in the fall. So that was a good learning curve for us. So now we'll focus on having those just in the spring months instead of trying to have them in the fall. But we had our dahlias. Our customers loved our dahlias. Our customers are big time dahlia lovers, which makes sense because dahlias are my favorite flower. So it would make sense that my customers are attracted to dahlias. We had our zinnias, our celosia, our basil. So a really great bouquet that our customers really loved. Again, it was our second top most popular bouquet of the season, so highly recommend if you're not growing those crops, add them if they're ones that do well in your climate. Okay, so then for our September bouquets, they're going to sound pretty similar to our August bouquets. So for our September bouquets, the lilies were done, and so we had dahlias, we had zinnias, we had celosia, we had cosmos, and then I had marigolds that I had planted, but I wasn't using the marigolds for their blooms. I was using it just for the greenery, which I actually really loved. It's like, I know that it has a scent, but it really doesn't seem to bother most people, and no one really says anything about it at our flower stand. So I just love like the nice like feathery look that it adds to the bouquets. Thought it was beautiful. So was able to harvest off of it for our bouquets. So in September, our florists were really buying the majority of our dahlias. So I really found that I could put like one dahlia in a mixed bouquet for the flower stand because we just didn't have the dahlias to be able to provide any more in our flower stand. So I think had I been able to put more dahlias in, we definitely could have had more sales, but they were just all going to the florist. And dahlias is one that I don't have a large markup on for our retail customers versus our wholesale customers. And so because of that, I would rather move them wholesale because I can move a large quantity of them at one time rather than moving them, onesies and twosies in the flower stand where it's not a guaranteed sale versus a wholesale sale where it's a guaranteed sale. So anyway, that was a good popular recipe with our customers. It wasn't as popular as the one that had the lilies and more dahlias in it since we had less dahlias to offer in September. Last month of the year for us for sales is October, and in October our bouquets had dahlias, they had zinnias, they had celosia, and they had smokebush in them. So if you don't grow smokebush, oh my gosh, I love it. It's so beautiful, such a good filler. It can kind of get like wilty if you cut it early on in the season, but if you wait and cut it later in the season, which is what I did, I knew I wanted to have it for my fall bouquets. So I was really intentional about like not cutting on it and just letting it grow and grow and grow and wait and cutting it in the fall. It was our first year having smokebush on the farm, and we were able to probably cut 2 or 3 stems from every single plant. So we have not made our money back yet on smokebush, but since it's a crop that we'll have for a long time, I feel confident that likely in year 2 we'll make our money back off of it. So, and honestly, it's really easy. Like we put it in the ground, we ran drip lines, and it grows on its own. There's not a whole lot you need to do. Like we have to weed it a couple times throughout the season. But it is a crop that did really well. It was nice for fall. It gave that like extra interest to our bouquets with that like deep dark color. I just really enjoyed working with it. So definitely recommend that if you're not growing smokebush, 10 out of 10 recommend growing it. It's just nice. It's easy. It's a fast cut. Like I found it like super quick to go, harvest 50 of them really quickly, 50 or 60 and have them for our mixed bouquets. We actually did 2 different recipes in October. So, I mean, we have multiple recipes all throughout the months, but these were like the ones that we sold the most out of. But I do want to add that one of our most popular recipes in October, and we were only able to do it for one weekend because, like I said, the dahlias were moving so quickly to florists that I just didn't have enough to sell retail. But I will say that when we were able to sell dahlias retail, I moved a ton of bouquets in one weekend at our farm stand. So our customers really loved just straight bunches of dahlias. So that was interesting because that wasn't necessarily true when I was at the farmer's market. I didn't find that my farmer's market customers really cared about getting straight bunches of dahlias, but my farm stand customers, I think because I've like taught them through marketing that how special dahlias are, they really cared about them. So it was really popular. We had a great sales weekend, our last weekend that our farm stand was open, because it was just straight dahlia bouquets. And I'll be honest with you guys, that was it was kind of actually me like in a panic. It was the first weekend that I truly had more dahlias than I knew what to do with. Like I remember being like, I have like 400 stems of dahlias or it was some crazy number. And I had already delivered to all of our florists. I didn't have any orders. And I remember calling my brother and being like, where am I going to sell these? And like strategizing. And we talked about like a couple of different options. And then I was like, you know what? I'm just going to try to move them all through the farm stand. And I moved every single one of them through the farm stand. So it was a really amazing, amazing weekend. So that was very popular with my customers. Not necessarily a mixed bouquet, but they really enjoyed the straight bunch of dahlias. So definitely something that if you're in a state where you have a ton of dahlias, definitely try that because it's super fast putting it together. So from a profitability perspective, like your labor is low when you're doing a straight bunch of a flower in your flower stand. So that was really easy. And just a quick recap, because I can't remember if I said it, but our most popular recipes were, first place was March, most popular recipe. Second place was August. Third place was June. Fourth place was the Dahlia straight bunches. And fifth place was our July recipe with all the lisianthus in it. Our customers really loved that. So, okay, let's chat about marketing your bouquets. So you have the flowers grown, you've harvested them, you know your recipes, you're ready to make your bouquets, you've got your bouquets made, and now you have to market the flowers. So what is the best way to do that? So if you've watched my other videos, I've talked about that we mainly use social media marketing, but what does that actually look like? So what I do to market our bouquets is I make a sales post on the days that our farm stand is open. And I think what is really important about that sales post is that you get really good photos of your flowers. I have found on days when I have not been as diligent about this, where there's like some things come up and I don't have time to get the pictures that I need to get, we don't make the sales that we normally make. So you really have to take the time to take good photos. Make sure that that you have good lighting. Make sure that your flowers look beautiful and how you have them displayed. Turn portrait mode on, get a little blur in there. I like portrait mode, makes your flowers look better, makes them pop more. So that's one thing. And then I don't like to just do like one photo of the flowers. I like to do multiple photos of the flowers. And so it's like very rare that I do them like less than like 5 photos of the flowers because I want them to be able to like scroll through and look at them. Because while our bouquet recipe is all the same, it might be a different like color palette throughout the recipes. So give them lots to look at so that they can decide if they want to come purchase flowers from you. And then the other thing that I like to do is I always like to make a video post to go along with it. So I don't do this every time that our stand is open, but I always do this so we open our stand 3 days a week. So on the first day that the stand is open for that weekend, I always make a reel to go along with it. And I just make it as if I'm walking into our flower stand and I pan the flower stand so that they'll know like, here's the walkway coming up. Here's what it looks like inside the flower stand. Here's where the flowers are. Here's where I pay. And then I end it. And so a lot of times I'll do a voiceover on it where I'm like, hey, flower friends, it's Flower Shed Friday, right? Because I just want it to sound fun. If I'm making it on a Saturday, hey, flower friends, it's Saturday stems. I don't ever make them on Sundays because by Sunday I'm lazy. But definitely make a video, post it, on your to Reels, share it to your stories, make one on Instagram, share it on Instagram. Make sure in that post that you're including your address information so that they know where to come to get the flowers. But those are the things that I think are really important when you're trying to market your flowers. Those are the things that we've done that have made the farm successful. I found that when I don't do those things, that we don't sell as well. So definitely recommend doing those things. The other thing that we do on sales days is I post to the Facebook groups. So find local Facebook groups that you can join that let you post about your business. You can be like, whatever your city's name is, community group, what's going on, your city name, what's happening, your city name. There's variations of it in every different city, but that's like the main gist of how you find your community groups. Join those, let them know about your farm, and then figure out which days you're allowed to make sales posts. Most of them you're only allowed to do one once a week, so I will do it on Friday mornings, and I just post the same post that I'm making to my Facebook. I go make it there. I'll try to post to like however many groups I can. So it'll let you cross post to several at a time. So do that. It makes it easier, but try to post to all of the groups, because the more people that see your post, the more sales you're going to make. So that's what we do for marketing of our bouquets. Let me know if you have any questions on the marketing side in the comments. It's one of my favorite things to talk about. I have my degree in marketing, so I really enjoy chatting about marketing, and especially marketing for flowers. Okay, well, that is all I had to share with you guys today. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a like and subscribe to the channel, and we will see you back on the next one. Let me know what other topics you'd like me to cover in the future. Drop me a comment, and I will put it on my list of things that we want to chat about. See you guys later. Our bouquet recipes. There's my child. Hey, did you get my text? Can I have a lemon water?
So this in the outtakes, I'm gonna be in it.
We can't go through one video without my kids coming in. Look, there's my little cutie. She's all dressed and ready for her band concert tonight. What do you want to tell the vlog?
Bassoon is the best instrument, and
We're hoping for a full ride bassoon scholarship, right?
Moon Over the Desolate Castle is the best song.
There we go. Now we know. Now you know. All right, I would totally take a lemon water. I'm parched.